Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. Now, the last couple of months have been such a ho-hum and when it comes to movies released, but now we're getting into November and December with a final push for studios to release films they are so confident deserve to be at the Oscars. Will they be successful? We will see. We have 4 brand new films this week on the show, including a cruise ship for the super rich sinks, leaving survivors trapped on an island, and we get a drunken Woody Harrelson as the captain in Triangle of Sadness. Cate Blanchett plays renowned musician Lydia Tar and is days away from recording the symphony that will skyrocket her career when everything seems to crash down all at once around her in the film Tar, a film that will make you think twice about going upstairs with your date after the first time hanging out in Run, Sweetheart, Run. And finally, based on true events, comes a true story of a mother's pain and fight for what is morally right after the death of her 14-year-old son who is brutally lynched in 1955 in the film Till. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows, what? A roar and a burst of flame.
The Movie Wire podcast.
You need people like me.
The Wire.
And here we go.
Now, here is a film that received an 8-minute standing ovation at its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. Triangle of Sadness is about a cruise for the super rich that sinks, leaving survivors from the upper class to the lower class stranded and trapped on an island in this social satire by Ruben Östlund.
So, is this runway casting for a grumpy brand or a smiley brand?
So it's a grumpy brand, yeah?
Congratulations! Show me that Balenciaga look. Suddenly I'm dressed in something way less expensive. It's H&M! Yay! Balenciaga! And H&M! Balenciaga! And H&M!
You looks paid for the tickets. Not bad, huh?
So what do you do?
I sell shit.
The success of a luxury cruise mainly depends on you. I don't want to hear anybody saying no. It's always, yes, sir, yes, ma'am.
I command you, enjoy the moment.
No.
No?
No.
What? You say no to me?
No, no.
Oh, so it's yes?
Yeah, no.
Yes?
Go in.
Yes! The sails. Do you think it's possible to wash them?
I don't think that's possible, ma'am, because this is a motorized vessel.
Yeah.
So we don't have any sails.
It was sails. Yes.
Well, then, in that case, we will clean the sails.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's
taste.
the only thing
To love.
that there's
love.
just too little love.
A Russian capitalist. And an American communist.
On a $250 million luxury yacht.
The ship is going under.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just the song, but for everyone.
is really bad. This is really, really bad.
And again, Triangle of Sadness is written and directed by Ruben Östlund, who to me is known for his sharp dialogue, powerful opinions through story, and when it seems like he's pushing commentary that deems in your face is actually more of a read between the lines. It's almost as he's having a debate with himself. Östlund has a true talent for laying out social commentary through story and is a master craftsman at it. And if you haven't seen his work, you need to check out movies such as The Square, Force Majeure, Involuntary, and Play. This film reaches to be a dark comedy social satire with a strategic list of unique characters. The movie splits itself up into, of course, 3 acts, and each one feels like it could be its own movie by itself. Act 1 sets a mild tone when it comes to what Östlund is going to introduce us to. We have our 2 famous models, Carl and Yaya, played by Harris Dickinson and Charles by Dean, who are out to eat what seems to be an expensive restaurant. As the check lays by the table, Carl looks nervously between the check and Yaya, and as he gives a subtle cough and nudge to the check, Yaya, staring at her phone, assumes that he is going to pay. And as she avoids eye contact by putting her main focus on her phone, she utters an unsympathetic thank you to Carl. This opens up the start of one of many conversations during the film about money and gender roles. Now let's fast forward to on board the luxury yacht where we see the crew start to prepare for our extremely rich guests, where we have Paula, played by Vicky Berlin, give a motivational speech to the waitstaff about how she understands the challenges of the service industry, and the end goal is to ensure the staff gets a hefty tip as the camera pans to the cleaning crew below deck. Paula then visits and knocks on the cabin door of our alcoholic captain that is held up in his room, played by Woody Harrelson, where he tells Laura he isn't feeling well enough to join the rest of the crew on deck. Östlund has a lot of characters to introduce us to, and he runs into the challenge of overwhelming us, or just giving us a brief description that gives us very little to care about. And what he does with each and every character is make them interesting enough to look forward to in future interactions. Some of these characters are likable, some of them are cleverly placed as satire vehicles, such as a very humorous character, a woman that claims that the sails are dirty, and the staff must clean them, when she is told that this is a motorized yacht and they didn't have sails on the boat. Given her status quo and not wanting to be wrong, she still demands that the sails be cleaned by the staff. But each character plays as though we are all on this yacht socializing with this colorful bunch of characters, including one of my favorite characters, Dimitri, played by Zlatko Borch, who made his fortune in the manure business. Now the entire cast gives it their all in their performances, and with the sharp on-point writing by Östlund, this really makes us look forward to see where they're going to go with the material. It keeps this film engaging to watch for its 2.5-hour runtime. Woody Harrelson is especially good as the captain. He was a treat to watch, but I wish we would have seen more of him in this film. Given the little screen time he has, you can tell he was having a ball with the role as our alcoholic captain. Östlund does something that is mere perfection when it comes to his character writing and direction here, where it is easy not to like the idea of privileged rich characters or even make it hard to relate to them. But Östlund doesn't make it over the top. He still adds a human element to them, but their actions deemed privileged, but their interactions are still human. There are times, yes, we do have moments of cringy, privileged, rich requests to the staff, but it doesn't discredit the characters to the point we don't want to see them on screen. Östlund builds these characters up just enough to really get to know these characters without truly knowing them. When we finally get our captain out of his drunken slump to attend a captain's dinner in a scene that shows off Östlund's understanding of how to tell a story without overdoing it. The dinner scene will be one of the most memorable scenes, and for sure will probably be one of the most talked about scenes. And fair warning, this scene is not for ones with delicate stomachs, where we find the entire dinner party get sick, and this is one of my favorite scenes as well, but not for the pure disgust of it, but where Östlund shines. This is where Östlund takes his movie up a level and where we see the wheels start to turn on where he's going to go with his messaging. It's almost like watching an introduction in the middle of the movie, and he adds a sense of chaos in this scene that doesn't run hyper speed. He appreciates the tone of chaos and takes his time building it up so the audience can really take it in and the messaging is not lost in translation. The chaotic scene is somewhat narrated by our drunk captain and our manure millionaire Dimitri as they discuss communism, socialism, and government failures over the intercom. Now, I have talked about my taste in chaos in film numerous times on the show. I love a good chaotic film if executed right. And Östlund masters this to a perfect balance of chaos and commentary. And when we look at Östlund's social commentary, what I like about his work is that it isn't in your face, preachy. It isn't one-sided. he gives just enough to open up a thought process and invite you to a respectful conversation. His intent is true due to the fact you can see that in the way he wrote and directed his characters. Now, when we have our passengers on the island, the setup almost comes across like it's going to end up like a Lord of the Flies scenario. We have our Rich and our 2 crew members stranded on the island, one of them being Abigail, played by Dolly De Leon, who is a maid, or what the film calls it, a toilet cleaner. De Leon gives an outstanding performance here where she has to balance likability, power, and leadership without becoming the villain, and Uslan justifies her actions with what the audience can relate to without making her tone feel too unhuman, when in fact he makes it completely relatable to the point we almost want to root for her, and that's also due in part to the rest of the cast understanding her position, and their understanding their survival is determined on this one woman that can build a fire, fish, and provide. Their future survival is relied upon her character. Now, I was torn in Act 3 and felt a little selfish. Even though it's a satisfying act and it's a good balance between the rest of the film, I almost wanted to see a Lord of the Flies transition to show the harshness of society. But I can understand why Uslan didn't want to fall into this trap, even though this would be messaging to show a very harsh and ugliness side to society to support his messaging. That wasn't his real intent in the story that he wanted to tell. His story satire was about money, power, gender roles, and the cause of effect of power. To have the best experience with this film, it is recommended to not see the trailer and just kind of go in blindsided. This is a movie that should be seen in theaters, to demand your entire attention to the screen, to really appreciate the subtleties, sharp dialogue, and the chemistry between all the characters. And knowing that this film is not going to be for everyone, but what I loved about what Ruben Östlund does with this, he keeps the commentary to a neutral tone and shows examples of communication and interaction of the characters when it comes to power, money, and the cause and effect of privileges. This is a movie that's not just a survival movie. That is the least of what it is. And that is why it's best going into this movie without seeing the trailer and just enjoy the subtle chaos, enjoyable characters, outstanding performances across the board, and a rare film that doesn't shove a creator's vision and commentary down your throat with propaganda, but rather opens up your mind and encourages healthy conversation when the film is done. I'm giving Triangle of Sadness 3.5 stars. Tar is set in the international world of Western classical music. The film centers on Lydia Tar, widely considered to be one of the greatest living composer-conductors and first ever female music director of a major German orchestra.
If you're here, then you already know who she is. Lydia Tar is many things. As a conductor, Tar began her career with the Cleveland Orchestra, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, until she at last arrived here at our own New York Philharmonic. In 2013, Berlin elected Tar as its principal conductor, and she's remained there ever since. Lydia Tar has also written music for the stage and screen. She is one of only 15 EGOTs, meaning those who have won all 4 major entertainment awards. Thank you for joining us, Maestro.
Thank you.
How's the writing going?
Not so well. I keep hearing something.
Schopenhauer measured a man's intelligence against his sensitivity to noise.
Do you ever find yourself overwhelmed by emotion?
Yes. Yes, it does happen.
We have a problem.
I received another weird email.
There's no reason to get caught up in any intrigue.
I'm worried. She's starting to disappear into herself.
You want to dance the mask, you must service the composer. You gotta supplement yourself, your ego, and yes, your identity.
You must in fact stand in front of the public and God and obliterate yourself.
written and directed by Todd Field, whose only directorial films are some small, lesser-known films like the fantastic film Little Children from 2006 and In the Bedroom from 2001, or a lot of us might know him from playing Tim Belzer Lewis in the 1996 film Twister. And let me tell you, Todd Fields has come a long way since chasing Twisters in 1996 to bring us a brilliantly crafted character study, and this will be his breakout writing and directorial credit. Now, right from the beginning seconds of Tar, something already different was happening that pleased me. At the end of each one of my shows, I ask listeners to do me a favor, and that's to stay for after the credits to show respect for those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film. Todd Fields places the credits in the beginning of this movie. You can tell the amount of training, work, and passion went into making this film. And rightfully so, this was a brilliant move to ensure that all creators got credit in front of a mass audience. Tar is the type of movie that those making films based on or inspired by figures of history should take a lesson from Todd Fields. Even though the story of Lydia Tar is a fictionalized character, the film treats the audience like a looking glass into a realistic life. It doesn't sugarcoat or dumb anything down for the audience to gain attention, including the music and composer's language. It challenges the audience to use more of context clues to understand the conversation around compositions. I've had the pleasure and benefit of playing and studying music since I was 10, and I'm a huge fan of the classical and opera genre, and for the most part I could follow along amongst the language. But again, I have not made it my life's work to study the composition or interpretation of music, and some of it did go over my head. But the context clues the dialogue offers is enough to keep our attention and kind of follow along with what the characters are saying. As I wrote my review for this film before the show, I got inspired, so I broke out my Vivaldi album of the 4 seasons, more specifically my favorite, which is Winter Opus 8, number 4 in F minor. And as I listened, I became more and more impressed with the attention to detail the entire cast and creators and crew put into this film. And even more so, I give Cate Blanchett, who plays Lydia Tar, a ton of credit. This is one of her best performances of her career. Watching her brought me back to looking at the conductor's direction, especially doing solo numbers, remembering making eye contact and just waiting for a nod or a grimace of acknowledgement of accomplishment from the maestro, or waiting for the dreaded hand gesture of improvement during. Hats off to Cate Blanchett for the work she must have put into this role. I know this is not an easy task to learn, and to make it so convincing as she does, she could be conducting a live concert and I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. There is no doubt in my mind that she will be on the list of nominees when it comes to Oscar time. Now, I know not everybody is going to have the same experience with this movie as I did. There was a certain sentiment I had while watching this movie, but what audiences can take away is appreciation for the cast and crew, for the amount of work that went into making a film of this magnitude, and for the brilliant character study the creators offer. Now, Lydia Tar is consistently distracted by her sensitive hearing, from things such as car vents knocking to a metronome, which has even argumentally given her the talent to hear the perfect pitch, in which you can see when this is heard by Tar when she gives her perfect emotional response from her ensemble, but has an even bigger distraction of having the reputation of being a world-renowned conductor. There is a hint of abuse of ego and power that trickles through the movie about a previous female colleague that Tar refers to as unstable and unfortunate throughout the film, and there are subtle hints of this mysterious character that grow as we see the progression of Tar's character's actions, or see her behavior crescendo irrationally, if you will. The majority of the film's surroundings and events are almost told in a world where we see it as Lydia Tar sees it. We see brief interactions from characters that interact with Tar, just enough to give us a true analysis of what each character is thinking. The only thing we are left with is the body language from some of the characters as they interact with Tar. The only time we get a verbal acknowledgement that there is something not right about Lydia Tar is when we are introduced to scenes with Lydia's partner Sharon, with yet another electrifying performance by Nina Haas. And this is because these two share an intimate relationship to make it known and relative that something isn't right with Tar. Tar gives an example of partners knowing each other's behaviors, but still, at the same time, we still have mysteries and skeletons in the closet of our own. And this example shines through through both of our characters between Haas and Blanchett. Director Todd Fields uses this craft of limited interactions and brief scenes to build a curiosity around Lydia Tar and to ensure that the viewer doesn't have a chance to place judgment on Lydia Tar too soon. We also see Fields' sharp dialogue to help support his vision of building upon Tar's character. There is a line delivered to Lydia as she has lunch with an old colleague, where she asks for his advice on accusations. He responds with a line that we all have going through our minds and way too often lately, which is, be accused of something is the same as being guilty. Tar is an example of why these films are meant for the big screen and not for streaming. This movie demands your attention to detail of the character's emotions, body language, and development. Blanchett's interpretation of the role couldn't be more spot on, as it is a subtle human performance that keeps her composure throughout the film until a final breaking point that one would argue seems too random and out of place, but I would argue to which seems too real and human. To reach a pivotal moment in success that you rely on the status quo and to have it ripped from you with little to no control. And the film does a great job not pointing a direct finger of guilt towards Lydia, but leaves enough to interpret and even question ourselves on what's the truth or even what side is believable, or is Lydia Tar conducting us as one of her symphonies to make us believe her vision. Tar, with no doubt in my mind, will be and does deserve to be part of awards time. That includes Best Actress with Cate Blanchett and writer-director Todd Fields. This is a movie that demands your full attention on our characters and will be an outstanding character study for film students in the coming years. For some moviegoers that don't enjoy a slow burn and a film surrounded around its characters to drive the film, they might find this not to be their cup of tea. But for me, I found Cate Blanchett's performance mesmerizing, the rest of the ensemble captivating, and this film to be one of the best movies of the year. I'm giving Tar 4 stars. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, don't forget to check out my reviews for movies that just hit streaming and are available to rent or buy now, including the bland Stepford Wives tale retelling Don't Worry Darling received 2 stars. The must-see family film Lyle Crocodile received 3 stars. The refreshing horror movie that is best seen not knowing anything about is Barbarian, which I proudly gave 3.5 stars. A film that will make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside is Gigi and Nate, and for no rhyme or reason, I gave it 3 stars. The Kevin Smith third installment of his Clerks trilogy, Clerks 3, brought a tear, smile, and 3 stars. And finally, a great rom-com premise is brought down by a consistent negativity by its characters in Bros, which received 2.5 stars. You can find those reviews on my previous episodes, and just a reminder, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit follow or subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. And make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at MovieWire Show. And now we're going to hear from a podcast in which I value this guy's opinion so much, especially when it comes to comic book movies. In my recent review of Black Adam, he so generously and graciously included my review of the film on his show. I've always loved and value this man's opinion when it comes to film and entertainment. Let's hear from one of my favorite people and podcasters. It's Josh over at the Talking Smack podcast. His link will be in the description of this episode. Make sure you check Josh out at the Talking Smack podcast.
Do you love comics, movies, video games, and more? We do too. Join me, Josh Scar, and my cast of colorful co-hosts on Talking Smack. Look for our yellow and red icon on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and other podcast players.
After what seems to be an innocent date, Sherry, played by Ella Balinska, now faces a Night of Terror when her date Ethan, played by Pilo Aspiec, hunts her down and tries to kill her. Sherry must now run for her life throughout the city and escape his grasp in Run, Sweetheart, Run.
Cute, so cute.
All right. Well, I gotta say, that is a very handsome client.
Why didn't you set me up with him?
You deserve someone nice.
Please be like the picture. Please be like the picture.
Cherie,
Ethan?
that's me. I thought you would appreciate the best sushi in LA.
One drink.
lose, I'll gain. I'm gonna hunt you. And if you make it through the night, then I'm gonna let you live.
You are a marked woman now.
He can smell you.
If you want to survive this game, the only person who can help you is a survivor.
I just need to lay low tonight.
How are you surviving now, huh?
From the shadow.
No one beats him.
He's like a monster. I need to win his game.
I'm not gonna go anywhere, sweetheart.
What are you?
Now, Run, Sweetheart, Run is a true film that does have my respect in some aspects, mainly because of how ambitiously different it tries to be, and at times it tries a little too hard and tries to show a certain freshness to the horror genre to really separate itself from the pack. I can respect this film, but that doesn't mean it's successful in its ambition. My respect goes to director Shayna Festa, whose current work includes Country Strong, The Greatest, Endless Love, and Boundaries. With this genre, one would think it would be a little out of her element, but her confidence shines through in her direction and vision in this film. She adds a visual and style that shows a brightness to its dark and stormy night feel. We see her directing style get stronger with each and every movie she does. Now, that's not to say it's perfect, because it's not, but there are noticeable differences we see in her style in this. What I can also respect about what the film does is make a villain feel like a true threat with the little use of special effects to attempt to give the audience a false sense of threat. The movie relies completely on the acting skills of Pilo Aspiak and Ella Balinska. Other than directing, Shayna Festa, along with newcomers Keith Joseph Atkins and Kelly E. Terrell, wrote and penned the script, and what these three do is not just rely on a main villain Ethan to carry the movie and just hunt and chase Sherry for a couple hours. It adds a thread of everyday obstacles to enhance the tension, such as being arrested, betrayal of friends, and it shines a light on the kindness of strangers as well. But this can also act as a double-edged sword, even though it was a clever concept. The execution of these concepts isn't there. The execution is so flawed it comes across as story-filled to keep the story moving. Most of the situations that Sherry is put in are extremely far-fetched to be believable, but Shayna Festi again compensates with this by adding a stylish cutscenes and pause sequences. The first half of the film is an entertaining but flawed first half, but to its credit, it's meant for those with a short attention span. It pulls us into Sherry's situation. I found myself putting down my laptop to stop taking notes and just watch it. I even got up, grabbed my Top Gun Maverick popcorn tin, and made myself some popcorn. What helps this movie flow is Ella Balinska, who shows a vulnerability but strength through the desperation to survive the night. Her character development flows and is never truly far-fetched until the climax of the movie, where we get the Clark Kent to Superman effect, where all of a sudden turns into a highly trained badass. Run, Sweetheart, Run, even given the cringy vulgarness of the title, has subtext messaging of a male dominant that uses his masculinity to intimidate and use a defenseless female as an object to his benefit. And throughout the movie, we see a lot of the good of humanity out there wanting to help the victimized, whether that's male or female. We get the tone of women empowerment, but it also uses random interactions with males to give an overall sense that there is good in all humanity. When we get to the end of the second act leading to the climax, the film starts to lose its pacing, and it starts to feel like it's running late for a deadline. It starts to rush itself to the point where it feels unbalanced, especially when we are introduced to the leader of an organization that I won't give away, where we're introduced to the character, the First Lady, played by Shora Agashlu. The film would have benefited from spending a little bit more time in this setting with the First Lady to help support the overly rushed climax. While meeting the First Lady, the movie feels like it should be spending more time with this character to truly understand and appreciate the true situation that Sherry and the audience discovers. Run, Sweetheart, Run wasn't made to win any awards. It's pure entertainment and a popcorn flick that you can stream. What makes this one stand out is the uniqueness it tries to be. But even though it looks great on screen, what could have really made this movie pop with the visuals is an on-point music score score to especially support a lot of the cutscenes that we see. This is where the film gets half of the execution what the filmmakers are trying to do. The idea is not what's unique, it's a recycled plot and story. What's unique is how the filmmakers try and tell the story. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of cool stuff to look at on screen when it comes to it, but it doesn't go far enough to heighten our sense to really be engulfed into what we're watching. Run, Sweetheart, Run, for what it is an okay way to kill a couple hours with some popcorn, and for the most part it does keep your attention and pulls you in for the first half. My recommendation is to make your popcorn about halfway through, because that is where they start to lose the viewer in an unbalanced execution. But for what it's worth, there are a lot of worse things to view on streaming right now. I'm giving Run, Sweetheart, Run 2 stars. It gets so hard to keep track and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening, download Newsly today. Based on a true story in 1955, after Emmett Till, played by Jalen Hall, is murdered in a brutal lynching, his mother Mamie, played by Danielle Deadweiler, vows to expose the racism behind the attack while working to have those involved brought to justice in the film Till.
I got a letter today from Auntie Lizzie. She said Bo's been working the fields. I can't imagine. Oh, he just doesn't understand how different things are in Mississippi. Are you listening?
Yes.
Be small down there.
Like this?
Emmett never thought anything would happen to him.
Meet the mommy, Simmy!
He just wanted to go on vacation and have fun with his cousins. But if my son could just get his feet back onto the Chicago soil, he'd be one happy kid. I don't know why I said that.
I want to talk to you about that boy.
They've come for you.
It's hard to describe what a mother knows. The first thing I noticed when I became a mother was that my hands were busy. All the time. My hand knew him with my eyes closed. Just like I know his laughter in a crowded room. It's the same thing when you know all of someone. This was my boy, Emmett Till.
The body of Emmett Lewis Till has been found dead.
Can I at least just fix him up a bit?
No. They have to see it for themselves.
You tell me, Mamie, how is risking your life gonna help him?
Those pictures of your son change people's lives.
I can't look, Mamie. We have to. The lynching of my son has shown me that what happens to any of us, anywhere in the world, had better be the business of us all.
Now, this is a film that hits us in the gut, and it hits hard. If you're like me that have kids, this film will bring you to your knees and hope that your child will never have to face the life of hatred, fear, and bowing down to anyone just for being present. To those without kids, it is no different to live a life with a set of standards of oneself that our society has deemed upon you. To fear those that are in control, to feel no hope, to feel the fear of your life being taken away for the mere action of standing up for yourself, your family, your values, or your pure sense of living an honest life, or just for living. situation. At times, our history can seem like an episode of The Twilight Zone, where we look back and ask ourselves how us as humanity have been so disgusting. And we can look back at actions of an era where we see society pressure of those in control, where only the brave stood up for what is right for humanity, but those in control gave justification from our laws and government that support those that felt they needed to spread hatred, and even to the point of ending a human life based solely on the color of their skin, let alone a 14-year-old boy. Or what Mamie says in the film, she raised Emmett to be able to drop to his knees and be humble to the white man, even if he bumps into one. But Mamie also raised him to grow up without fear and to just be a child. And we see how Mamie, played by the incredible Daniel Deadwyler, raised Emmett. Emmett is a respectable 14-year-old boy, but also has the curiosity of a 14-year-old boy. But at the end of the day, he means well. From entertaining his cousins while picking cotton in the field, to trying to give a compliment to Mrs. Brandt, a white convenience store clerk. The compliment in the situation seems to go too far to Mrs. Brandt, who gives an obvious hatred of color towards Emmett, where Emmett's group of cousins force him to leave the heated situation. Later we see the aftermath of Emmett's social mistake in the 1950s. We see Brandt's husband, played by Sean Michael Weber, and accomplice, Mr. Milam, played by Eric Whitten. They both show up to Emmett's aunt and uncle's house, played by John Douglas Thompson and Keisha Tillis, and they force the family to give up Emmett to teach him a lesson. Here we are met with the most chilling, emotional, and powerful shots of the movie, where we see Emmett's uncle, Preacher, staring in the distance as Emmett is taken away, and is followed by a wide-angle, quiet shot in the middle of the night with only a shed in the distance lit up, and the only thing you can hear is Emmett's scream of pain. And even though the filmmakers don't allow you to see anything, it is powerful enough. You are forced to shut your eyes and feel the pain deep down in your heart and soul for Emmett. The film is filled with a lot of these powerful, emotionally driven shots, and it is brilliantly done to get their emotional point across. We see time and time again of these films giving courtroom battles, protests, and a lot of things to get their legal point across, but the one human element missing is the emotional attachment to all the characters. This is what the filmmakers do so right when it comes to this film. It focuses on the characters' pain, not the legal battle. We want to feel what the characters went through in the time of this nightmare. We should feel the characters' emotional pain. We should feel their fear. We should feel every emotion coming through this powerful story, and it is executed flawlessly. Till was directed by Chinani Chakwu, whose only major motion picture was 2019's Clemency, which focused solely on moral thought and human emotion surrounding actions. This film follows her forte in the human emotion element, and as I talk about it in my recent episode, the based on, inspired by stories that we see so much in movie, Chakwu takes the based on elements that focus on a mother's anger, sadness, and pain surrounding her son's death and makes it a prime focus of the film to get its messaging across as it should. There is a powerful scene where Mamie sees her son's body after it is found and decides to have an open casket with him as he lays, and in her words, to show the world what is the result of what is happening in the world. And that's what director Chakwu leads by example of Mamie, to show the human element of the horrific actions that haunt our past through the pain of a mother and family. When we talk about the based on storytelling in movies, this is as true as you're going to get. The movie stays accurate through the events as it can be, and limits a lot of the legal scenes. It's court scenes, and you can tell the filmmakers avoid this due to the fact we may not have all the events that happened in the courtroom. And it mainly focuses again at the heart of it, which is the heartbreak of the situation, and not to detour the focus of a character-driven emotion so the audience can see the pain. To be a movie based on true events in Chakwu's film that surrounds a mother of pain of loss, there's no way to replicate a parent's reaction to loss or how Mamie truly reacted, and that makes it a fair assessment of being based on, when one's focus is on a human element. And as I said in the beginning of this season of the show, that film isn't important to always be open and stay away from censorship. Other than books, film is a way we learn from history by or based on or inspired by true events, because we never know what the future in society is going to deem morally right. And we see that true even today. And this is a film that does it the right way by not giving us an interpretation of events just by protest courtroom scenes, but to show the true individual's pain as a result of our actions. When we really look at the story that just happened 67 years ago in 1955, when we think about it, it isn't that long ago, given how horrific those times were for African Americans. What the real amazement to me is that there was talks in 1955 of the Anti-Lynching Act that took place in part of Emmett's story, which would make lynching a federal hate crime, which would seem like almost a common sense law. But that law didn't get placed until just this year in 2022. Even though we look at the horrific events, we still have a long way to go. The reason I bring this up, this proves the point that I have always said when it comes to ways we learn from film, TV, to books. It shows us history, culture, society pressure, and this is why it's important for director Chuck Woo to give us a human element. Give us something to sympathize, to show empathy with, to not repeat our mistakes. We have no idea what the future holds, and as we take reminders off the table, especially in books and film, we run into the danger of repeating it. And this movie reminded me of a lot of that element that we are missing from a lot of the stuff out there. This is one of the most brilliant written films that I have seen in a long time that really utilizes the human element to teach a lesson. Show the people's emotion behind the history. That's where we learn as an undivided race. Change the culture through the point of view of emotion, and that's what this film does so right. Now, the film focuses on Mamie's pain, again played by Danielle Deadwyler, who again gives the performance of her career that will deep dive and echo into your soul. Now, where the film slightly lacks, and I said this earlier, where it seems focused on its messaging of driving the human emotion, the film tends to speak of the environment of Mississippi versus Chicago, from the words of Mamie, during the 50s as a complete cultural change. But the film never really lets us see the difference between Mississippi and Chicago in the 1950s, other than the convenience store and some intimate shots with the family. This makes the movie a little less impactful in the balance of buy-in, other than the emotional aspect. I can understand Chuck Woo's messaging, but giving us a bird's eye view of the transition between Chicago and Mississippi as an example before we see the horrific events unfold would have helped drive this story a little bit more. Even the visuals of even looking upon the setting is a little off, where we see more up-close shots than wide-angle shots. And this mostly happens in the second half of the film, but it tends to look on purpose. And I get we're trying to get the character emotional impact, but in some scenes, a wide-angle shot would have had a bigger impact. Chuck Woo relies too much on the up-close shots, and at times it does become a little noticeable that we're trying to avoid the settings. Till is an emotionally charged film that will make you angry walking out of it, but that is the intent of the filmmakers. This film should make you angry, it will make you shout at the screen, it will make you shake your head in shame, and that's a sign this film was real and successful at deep diving into the soul of moral humanity. I'm giving Till 3.5 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. Again, thank you for listening, and thank you all for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcast. Until next week, do me a favor and make sure you stay for after the credits to show your support for those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film. And don't forget to support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show, or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.